My name is Maniza Naqvi, and this is the 15th episode of the Little Book Company podcast. And today I'm in conversation with Nawabzada Syed Shams Haider, whose debut novel, To Chamba House, has been published by the Little Book Company as an ebook. Welcome, Shams.
Thank you, Maniza, to having me on your podcast.
I'm very happy to have you here. And shall we begin by you telling me what brought you to writing this wonderful novel, To Chamba House?
Well, Maniza, as you know my background, I'm not a writer as such. I'm basically, I come from a landed family of Punjab and was schooled in Aitchison College and FC College. And since it's been quite a while, I had been collecting story in my mind from my father, my grandfather, my uncles. So I just wanted to pen them down with, made-up characters. But the story in To Chamba House has some, there are some real stories also, though I've changed the names, but the stories are of my own family. So when I started the first chapter, that it took me at least more than 3, 4, 5 years to actually complete it, because I was so busy in politics, I didn't get the chance to really write. But after, I took a break from politics, so I decided to write this novel.
So many questions already, Shams. What were you doing in politics?
Maniza, actually, since you know my background, I come from a family which has a long political history. My grandfather, Nawabzada Syed Shams Haider Shah, was a member of the Punjab Assembly in 1924. And then again, an MLA in 1935 with Quaid-e-Azam. He represented Punjab in the Round Table Conference in 1932. And later again, then he became an MPA in 1952. So it's a long, legacy I had to fulfill. One of my great granduncles was a very close friend of the Qaid Raja Gazanfar Ali Khan. And it was by chance that I entered politics. Believe you me, I have never been interested in it. But the time I spent in 3 sittings in the assembly, I've tried my best what I could do. So I guess politics is my profession now.
Mm-hmm.
And right.
So tell me, Shams, where in the Punjab is your constituency? Where you said you were, from a landed family. Where in the Punjab?
Basically, we are, my clan is Bukhari Sayyid. And we migrated from Baghdad, Iraq, to Uch Sharif, and from Uch we spread around from Peshawar, came down to Jhelum. There is a tehsil known as Pind Adan Khan, which actually is the gentleman I mentioned, Raja Gazanfar Ali Khan. He comes from the family who, initially were part of the Pindada Khan itself was part of their Jagir. So there's a small town called Jalalpur Sharif, which my great grandfather came and settled there, and that is my constituency also.
Okay, and so when I read To Chamba House, or rather when I read it, I felt that it was quite autobiographical in its telling. And were you influenced by your landed background, as you said, and particularly from your particular area in the Punjab?
Not really, Maniza, not from the area. I was influenced by my grandfather and my great-grandfather, Raja Gazanfar Ali Khan, because they were both politicians and pre-partition politicians. And the stories which I heard from them over a period of time were mingling with the princely the princes and the Nawabs and all. So the story told to them, told by them to my father, and my father told me. So it retained in my memory for quite a while. And I'm really fascinated with the pre-partition era, somehow or another. So it was easier, and because I have a liking for history, so somehow or another that period became very important to me. And I wanted to write something for the next generation, because lots of things have if they're no longer there anymore. The gentleman is no longer there. The eating habits, the way you have to behave with people, your relationships. I mean, much has changed.
But are you talking about a certain class of people?
Yes, I mean, basically. So see, I mean, most of the historian and history fiction writers have picked up the princely states from the Hindu background. But we got to understand there were 300 to something like 700 states, and lots of them were Muslim landed gentry, Jagir states. So it's a story of one of them. So nobody really portrays their lifestyle and their, way of living.
And in your novel, there are quite a few wonderful characters who you've really sketched out in a lot of detail, in a lot of, I would say, loving detail. There's Khan Bahadur, Hashmat Jahan, there's Noorun Nisa, and there's Assistant Collector James Harding, and there's Zora Handy, and there's Nargis. Would you speak to all of them, please, a little bit? I'd like you to begin with talking a little bit about Noorun Nisa. Does that...
Basically, I mean, Noorun Nisa is a character which, generally, if you look at the relationships and the way old families behave, I mean, they're not very accustomed to having, for example, Noorun Nisa is a daughter of a very well-known film actress at the time. And her husband, Nawab Akbar Jahan, is a Nawab. But they do get married. But the relationship was not very conducive to the fact that in those times, these kinds of marriages were, looked down upon. So Noorun Nisa comes out as a pariah in the sense, because the actress, the lady who Nawab Asif Jahan marries, actually elopes and goes away to Gibraltar with some gentleman, major by rank. And she's blamed for all that. And Nawab Akbar Jahan treats her as, being vindictive about the whole episode. So her life is, of a girl growing up without no mother, and the father being very harsh. She is sent to, the Swiss finishing school. She comes back at a very early age. She is married to an older man, but a very rich man. So there's a lot of, suffering on part of Noorun Nisa. So that character is something which, I can relate to in a sense. I've seen these characters being played out in different families, not as rich as the princely state Nawabs, but generally of the elite, the Zimidar backgrounds. They still have those, old-fashioned notions about not marrying out of their class.
Yet they seem to have a real fondness for Hira Mandi and marrying into it.
Yes, I mean, naturally, when he marries an actress, and in those days, an actress, pardon my saying so, were not from a reputed family. They were artisans who had, worked very hard and gained their position as singers, and then ultimately they became actresses. So you're right, very right. There were double standards there, very much so.
And why do you think it was that there was such a that men from this class of landlords and Nawabs had this sort of attraction for since we're speaking in English, so the red light area of Lahore.
Right.
And and then they fell in love with the women there.
Actually, Maniza, you got to understand two things here, because what generally we read about the Hira Mandi and the night entertainers is totally different what we see today. Today, it's a different story altogether. In those days, in Lucknow, much earlier than the pre-partition era, I mean, in Lucknow, the ladies, the ladies running the brothels were so well educated, and so they had some such lovely manners that even the Nawabs and the Jagirdars were sent their own daughters to those places to learn the art of, entertaining people. So I guess it was not as what we see today. I mean, if we discuss it today, it's all bad and filth. But in those days, these women were much educated, as compared to their own wives.
Mm.
And secondly, you've got to also remember that in those days, there were no televisions, there were no, means of entertainment, there were no radio, gramophones and all stuff like that. So a gentleman used to spend their evenings. I mean, the other part of the physical attraction of is totally different. But they were like, having a gramophone in the house, a live musical evening.
Mm-hmm.
So every Jagirdar or Nawab or a prince would invite these women over, not for the purpose of making them dance, because classical music was very much in at the time. They understood the, small details about what rag it was and what rag should be heard at what time it should be heard.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more of, let's put it, entertaining purposes rather than giving it a bad repute for that matter.
Connoisseurs of music and art.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because they understood the rags and the raganis, and in the evening this rag should be played, and this is the verse which should play.
Mm-hmm.
The lyrics should be sung in this particular medium or rag, whatever. So I guess what you saw and say about the Hira Mandi and the Nawabs falling in love, no, definitely they would have fallen in love with somebody who was better than their wives. They could sing, they could entertain, and the wives were not, they never allowed their daughters to get educated. So it was very understandable there for them to falling in love.
Yes, because they were actually, dealing with or having a relationship with a woman in a way they're equal mentally and emotionally.
Exactly.
So speak about Nargis.
Nargis is the second part of she's actually what if you look back into our history, you see a lot of film actresses who were basically from the red light area, and they were good singers. Ultimately, they ended up becoming famous actresses. So my character Nargis has been drawn from those actresses which started from a very humble singing career and became stars or loved by everyone. So Nargis is one of that character.
Mm-hmm. And she follows. I mean, she's the great love of one of your main characters. You want to speak about him?
Actually, it's not love per se, but I would say it's more likeness and appreciating Nargis as a singer rather than anything more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, because the entrance now to Zora Handy.
Yes, Zora Handy, daughter of a Persian Parsi wine merchant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Hashma Jan actually is in love with Zora Handy.
Mm-hmm.
So all his life, he has no, after that, he has never looked at any other woman and in such a way that he would like to marry her, because he remains a bachelor for all his life.
Mm-hmm.
though Zora Handy is ultimately gets married to one of his friends, but he remains in love with her till late.
Mm-hmm. And what separates Zora from Hashmat Khan for so long? What happens? Can you speak to that a little bit? That they are unable to marry?
During the courtship, they ended up. Zora Handy gets pregnant, and Hashmat Shah's father, Nawab Akbar Shah, wouldn't let him marry her. So he puts, gives him a proposition that you go and fight in the First World War and prove yourself to be a man. And when you come back, then I'll give you the permission. And while he's abroad fighting in the First Great War, and there's no connection because all the letters which Hashmat writes to Zora and Zora writes back to him are intercepted by Zora's father. So they have no correspondence as such. So he doesn't know that she's pregnant. And while he's fighting a war, ultimately Zora has to make a decision, which I'll leave it to the readers what happened later.
Yes. And speak to me a little bit about the assistant collector, James Harding.
Yes, James Harding has a very interesting story because he's a son of a lord and a second son of a lord. And his mother is basically Afghan Jew, which Harding's father brings back from Afghanistan after one of his expeditions and ultimately secretly marries her. So James has a great feeling for India and the locals. So his mingling with, after having met Nurun Shah, both fall in love with each other. So it was very natural. And he's more of a Desi Saab rather than a typical pompous Englishman.
Well, amazing the number and kind of characters that you brought together in this novel, To Chamba House, Shams. And they come together so beautifully, and you weave such a wonderful tale. And you've written it in such a sort of a page-turner manner that I really feel that this book would make such an amazing film.
First, I would like to thank you, Maniza, on really helping me out here, because probably I would have written it and it would have been lying around in one of the godowns, and when I would have passed away, somebody would have picked up and say, "Oh, my grandfather wrote something," or "My father wrote something." But at least you got it on paper, and I'm thankful to the Little Book Company for really, having published it. So I guess I owe everything to your Little Book Company.
Well, Shams, this is, I get really serious about these things. This is such a good book. And I am so amazed that, this was sitting there like a hidden talent in you. And it's such a good book that would have been such a pity if it had not seen the light of day. So I am so happy, and I feel honored that I got a chance to publish this book and read it, and to fight with you a lot during the editing process.
I know, and I had a great learning experience since you were yourself a published author and for many books. So I learned, it was a learning process. I'm very, very grateful because where I had gone wrong, you had been more than forthcoming in helping me out. So thank you again, Maniza. Thank you very much.
It was such a pleasure. It was such a pleasure. And let's keep on talking about the book a little bit more. I want you to talk about a particular horse that makes an appearance in a big way in this book.
That is very interesting because I wrote an epilogue rather than it was part because it was mentioned in the book. The horse was named Busaflas, and it's actually a true story. And the horse belonged to my family actually.
Mm-hmm.
It had won the 1947 Derby, and then partition happened. So my grandfather wanted that horse back in Pakistan. So it's a story of the horse being smuggled by three people because there were no borders as such at the time until in the early 50s, till the late early 50s actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a story of the prize-winning predicted horse being brought across a border while there was this exodus going on and people were dying and being butchered.
Mm.
So I mean, for the readers, at least I can say for sure it's a true story as I've heard.
Yes. And I'll stop you again right there because I don't want you giving away the book. And you know that you and I have a little bit of a argument here as well, because you end the book in my opinion, in such a beautiful and powerful way. And you feel, and I think that is the end of the book, and you feel like you need to give us a whole new book or a few more chapters to sort of tie some loose ends, whereas I don't think that's the case at all.
I think, Maria, good news is that I've completed those 5 chapters and they gel pretty well with the whole novel. And hopefully I'll be sending you those because lots of people who read the book, especially the people who I knew very well, because the story was such, the way the story was written about two people who were so madly in love. And abruptly, the whole thing ended after partition. But the life went on after partition too. So this time around, bringing those characters together was one of my main objectives of writing and, answering my critics that, no, the story went on. We thought that it would end in 94. So basically, the story is about 50 years, starting from the World War I, beginning of 19th century till the 1950s, because we ended the story after partition 1947.
Mm-hmm.
But 10 years later, I'll just give you a preview on it, that Khanwa Hashmi Jahan goes back to India as the ambassador of Pakistan to India. So it's a very new, and I had to end it also because I've shown you the grandeur of the period before partition, but ultimately that tarnished with time and things started happening and the way we see it now. So, I wanted the readers to take this journey from the beginning of the era to the end of the era.
Mm-hmm. So, again, we're going to take that discussion offline, and I will tell you my reasons for why I feel the way I do. But it's wonderful that you're continuing to, that you're still very involved with this book. And like I said, this could be a film or this could be, a serial. And nowadays, as we can see, there are all these wonderful serials being made out of Pakistan. And this in the right hands could be a wonderfully engaging serial. But
please,
no,
please.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know about this serial, but I think I'm a movie buff myself. So with the series I've been watching lately, they have no substance to it, and the amount of money they have been spending on those serials is just fantastic. And I think if this novel is really there, I mean, you being the boss here, if you say so, I think it could be a good serial because it's the multifaceted characters, and it is an insight into an era which is no longer there.
I say so. The only caveat I have, and it has nothing to do with the serial, it is that you keep you keep saying the grandeur of pre-partition days, right? And your perception, your viewpoint is very much with the colonizer, I feel.
Not really. See, basically, there's a lot of debate on where you stand. I think it's not that the grandeur is about the British being there in the British were there is a reality, but the grandeur was much before even the British entered the subcontinent. I mean, these princely states were 700, 800 years old, where the British were only 300 years old, the British Raj. So I don't think the grandeur is because of the British being here, but I have, in certain chapters, I mentioned that the subjugation of the local people by the invaders was, it didn't leave something. It left a bitter taste in the mouths of Indians. But then it was a reality. You can't, deny that the British did come and invade India. But there's no grandeur of the British being here. I must, declare myself here. And I'm very pro-Indian or Pakistani, whereas this is concerned.
So tell me, what would you say in defense of princely states? What's good about having a princely state?
Maniza, because lots of people have not read the history, so they have their own point of view, and I guess it's fair enough. The princely states basically came about when the Mughals were ruling here, and the Mughals couldn't keep a whole army under one banner, so they give fiefdoms to different people who were part of their court and gave them the titles of Nawab and Jagirs. And in return, they had to manage a small army. And whenever the Mughal king would want them to join them in a fight against other people, so they would send their armies there. So that's how they got their wealth and fame from.
So you mentioned in your book, I might forget the term, but is it Das Hazara or something?
Das Hazari. Das Hazari. Das Hazari. That title meant that he could keep, soldiers, about 10,000 soldiers, because the land was given to them so that they can earn the revenue and upkeep the army.
So in this case, the Nawab has the title of having Das Hazari because he has 10,000 men that he can contribute, right? To the Mughal king in case of war. But this is also throughout history has been common, whether it's British history or any other history where there have been kings and kingdoms and empires, and that it was according to how the warlords could, what level of army they could muster up to bring to the war, right? And
and especially when a great empire fell, and there were a lot of infighting. So basically, these small princely states became independent. They revolted against the Delhi Darbar. And with time, they gained their own, land and armies. So this is how the princely states became part of an Indian landscape.
By the armies they contributed?
Yes, because they had the army and the Darbar, the Delhi Darbar, when it became weaker after Aurangzeb. So most of these Das Hazari, title holders formed their own princely states. They marked the boundary and they became rulers of that.
And how did the British exploit that?
But the British exploited because when the East India Company was here till 1857, uh, they didn't say much to these states. But as their hunger for more territory grew, they started taking over most of the states. And one of the reasons the 1857 mutiny was that Awadh and Lucknow were taken over by the British, and Jhansi was taken over by the British. And that's the basic, one can debate that it was a supply mutiny, but this was also a very big cause that most of the princely states were being taken over by the British government at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But they were being taken over by the British government, but the princely states also helped to shore up the British Raj, no?
Not, I mean, you can debate it either way because they had no choice. I mean, they didn't have the army to fight back the British at the time. But in the 1857 mutiny, most of these princely states took arms against the British and fought against the British.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Mysore, led by Sultan Tipu, was a princely state.
Right.
But Sultan Tipu fought against the British.
Mm-hmm.
Hyderabad Dakkan did, but ultimately joined the Marathas and was subjugated by the British. So they did try wherever they got a position where they thought they were strong enough to rebel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Shams, we'll take a small pause here and we'll come right back. All right? So, Shams, we're talking about the princely states and their role in undivided India, and then also their role during the British Raj. And your book, To Chamba House, really shines a light on the perspective of the aristocracy, the Indian aristocracy, pre-partition, and in this case, a Muslim princely state and family and all their relationships and connections. And in that way, it is so interesting, and also their role in the discussions for an independent India.
Yes, I'd like to mention something very interesting here, that I was going through some of my old papers in my grandfather's library, and I came across one of his speeches, which he had delivered in 1932 at the Round Table Conference, where Qaid-e-Azam and Gandhi Sahib was part of that, council. And in that speech, he has demanded from the British that Sindh and northwest frontier areas should make there should be two promises: a Sindh promises and the northwest frontier promise. Now I thought back, and being in politics, I said, how far they were thinking. Because unless there were promises like Sindh and frontier, they could not have had Pakistan. Because to make Muslim areas into one unit and then claiming that it should be part of Pakistan, so the strategy was they had started planning on having an independent state in the 30s.
Well, does that not what you're saying, does that not contradict the idea that they had of contiguous states with administrative rule in the hands of majority Muslims?
They actually, Sindh was part of the Bombay, constituencies. So getting an independent Muslim state, a predominantly Muslim state, I'm not talking about the princely states here. I'm talking of the provinces.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
so the Sindh province and NWFP province was, established after the Muslims' demand in the Round Table Conference, because Round Table Conference was meant to get the maximum self-rule at the time. There was nothing about independence.
Right. Right.
And most of the princely states were nominated. There were members in that council. And they, as Indians, presented their case with the British that it's high time that Indians should be given self-rule now.
Hmm. Indians or the princes?
No, the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
India, because the princely states were representing India. I mean, the Congress was representing India at the time. There was no Muslim League. There were other Sikhs who were wanting an independent, self-rule. Hindus were wanting self-rule. The Muslims were, and most of them Muslims were led by Sir Aga Khan, because he was the joint leader for the Muslims representing the Round Table Conference. And the Nawab of Bhopal was one of the main, focal person for the Muslims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So jumping ahead now to your career in Parliament. When you look at the Parliament in Pakistan.
Personally, I like to forget about it because now claiming being a politician is like telling you that I've been a rogue all my life.
Well, I'll just say you said that.
Please.
I wouldn't dare say such a thing.
I think, unfortunately.
Sorry?
Gee. Yeah, unfortunately, when I joined politics, I was under the impression what my grandfather and my father had given me, that it was a very sacred duty of a person to represent so many people and, do your best for them and this and that. But after 30 years of politics, I'm so disillusioned. It is just, exclusive club for the elite.
Yep.
Nothing more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it's very, would it be wrong for me to say it very much reflects princely states?
In what way?
In the way that most of the people sitting in Parliament are landlords.
There's a difference here. I mean, the princely states and the Jagirdars are two different two different classes. They're not one class. One has to understand that there were very few. I mean, like 700, 800 princely states. But the Jagirdars would be like in thousands. They're not one and the same.
What is the difference? Can you tell me? Don't they both have land? I mean, aren't these landed people?
Anybody can own land. I mean, if you start buying land today and a certain amount you have, you become a Jagirdar. Jagirdar means owner of land.
Or if you're given
but
land.
Princely states said the princely states had a different identity altogether. They had their own fixed boundaries. And they were not owners of the whole land. I mean, they were individual Jagirdars living within the princely states.
Did they? What relationship did they have with the people in those states, the princes?
It depends on, because basically, I mean, what we have read from, the history is written by the British themselves. I mean, whatever they want to make of Indian, they could make him a rogue, they could make him a hero. But I mean, like good and bad people in every society, in every culture, in every business. So you could not say that all were bad and all were good. I mean, there were good administrators and there were very bad administrators. They were very flamboyant with their acquired wealth. And then they were like, for example, in my story, I mean, the sitting Nawab, who's Nawab Asif Jahan, and his younger brother Khan Bahadur Jahan, have a difference of opinion so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the sitting Nawab is very flamboyant about buying cars and, having pet dogs and all. But Khan Bahadur is a very rational man.
Mm-hmm.
He believes things have changed. When one should be, and he's very mature in that sense and very grounded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between the two brothers also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And you tell that difference beautifully in your book. And there's a description of a hunt in the book, which is also fascinating. A hunt has been organized as one of those flamboyant, luxurious.
They're very interesting. There's a lot of politics behind these hunts also. Now, see, Nawab Asif Jah and his father, Nawab Akbar Jah, and so on, the Rajgarh family, they had been holding these annual hunts. I mean, they were like, in a sense, because initially the big boss was the British at the time, and getting a viceroy over for a hunt and getting together all of the other princely states, an occasion of a hunt. But behind the scenes, there were a lot of wheeling and dealing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting the viceroy in a very friendly atmosphere, getting their thing done,
Mm-hmm.
So it was not only just a hunt, it was annual ritual of the subjugated population being homage to their masters.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. Let's get back to your career as a parliamentarian, Shams. Are you a sitting parliamentarian now?
No, I am not, fortunately. I mean, Maniza, when I first went into politics 30 years back, I was one of the youngest among the members in the Punjab Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd come back from States, and I thought I was a bit cocky also, that I knew better than my colleagues. And every average age of that assembly in the 90s was like 60 plus. And I was in my 30s. And I saw quite a few of them in those typical village attire, like the dhoti and pagadi. So, but you will be surprised that after a month, I was put down in a sense that I was so fascinated by the wisdom of those common people who did not know a word. They could not write, but they had the wisdom to even, I mean, they were philosophers, they were thinkers, and somehow or another, I learned more from them than I learned in college. And unfortunately, I was, and it was supposedly known as, the word coined as unpad assembly. And I was privileged enough to be part of a assembly which was known as the graduate assembly, because one of the, should I mention it or not? But one of the person ruling the country at the time thought that since it is these old parliamentarians who have no education should be kept out of the parliament and bring graduate people. So I was privy to become part of that assembly where everybody had to be a graduate. But believe you me, Maniza, the people I met when I joined the assembly 15 years earlier were far, far, far better intellectuals. Though they did not know any word of English, they could not write, but they had the common sense. They were brilliant. And some of my colleagues who were graduates, I'm sorry to say, but not even 1/4 of the intellect which those people had. So unfortunately, we lost a lot of good parliamentarians by these misadventures.
That would have been during General Musharraf's period? So Shams, you were talking about, your experience when a stipulation, a conditionality was put on who could be stand for elections for parliament, and they had to be graduates, and how they were not as thoughtful or as intellectual as those when this conditionality was not there.
So, because there's no shortcut to experience, Maniza, because most of it's a misconception about politicians, especially Pakistani politicians, that I mean they got to be good orators. They have to plead their case in the parliament, but it's not that, because most of the laws which are passed in a parliamentary form of government are already pre-discussed, and the parliamentarian is only there to vote yes or no. He has no say in it. But if the party leader wants for them to say yes, there's no way you can say no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the role of a parliamentarian in Pakistan is more of a rubber stamp than anything else. I'm sorry to say. Probably my colleagues would disagree with me. But what I have learned after such a long time is that I think we basically don't need a parliamentary form of government. We need a benign despot, a person who can lead the country with honor and make decisions, and not by a bunch of people who don't even know what they are there for.
So should we have
Simply speaking, because I remember once there was a law being passed in a health department. Sorry, hello?
Yes, no, I'm listening to you.
Yes, the one incident I remember is that there was a law being passed in the health department, and I was parliamentary secretary of health at the time, and I just went across it, and there was this line which said that the chief minister has the discretion of appointing administrators for the hospitals. And it was a very vague kind of a thing. There was no criteria mentioned about the person who's going to be appointed. So I was sitting next to the law minister, and I told him, I said, have the law committee really vetted this? What are you doing? We are thinking that our chief minister is the best. He probably would look at the merit. But just imagine, if there is another government and they don't have as dignified or as righteous chief minister, then what will happen? He can pick up anybody on the street and nominate him as the administrator of the health institution. What are you going to do then? And he laughs back and he looks at me and laughs and says, oh, please, we have very little time. Now we have to get this passed today. And it became a law. Until now, I think that this is just one incident. There's so many of them. The laws are not vetted properly. They are given to the law department. The law department does not do a proper job. They bring the bill in the parliament, and the parliamentarians are asked, the government parliamentarians are asked to say yes. And most of them, they don't understand what the bill is about. So what kind of a parliament is it? So that's why I say we are actually wasting time and money on electing people. Either we change it to the presidential form of election, let the whole nation choose one man, and let him choose his team. Let him work for 5 years.
So that's your idea of a benign despot?
No, benign despot is a little going far. Despot is a despot in any case, benign or not.
I'm glad you
pointed that out. But the thing is, usually these benign despots, like in China and Singapore, and I can name quite a few other, where they have been very successful.
Okay, I love the way you compare Singapore, which is a city, to China.
Yeah, but a small state and a very large state.
So
it has its downs also. I mean, it's not a perfect system. None of them are perfect systems. But which we can adapt properly with the See, our average age is now, some say, 18-year-old boy who's going to vote, and probably he doesn't even know where he's standing, what his future is. But he's voting for a party or people he does not know. You can convince them one way or another. The ultimate result is that you make fools of hundreds of people and don't deliver. It's really, really frustrating, by the way.
I'm really sorry that you've had such a frustrating experience with would you call?
But Maniza, that's the truth. That's the you know.
So would you consider the parliament in Pakistan, particularly the one that you participated in, and even after, I didn't mean to say particularly, but till now, have you felt that they have been truly free to do what they please, and that they have been democratic in the true sense of the word?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's more like a parliamentary form of dictatorship, because the head of the party is the one who makes the decision, not the party itself.
So pretty much like a head boy.
So in any case, yeah, the head boy. I mean, once you decide that you're going to do, and a bunch of people who are very close to you are your advisors. Once you make the decision, the rest are sheep. They have to follow the leader then.
So tell me, what was it like being at Aitchison? How did it compare to Parliament?
I mean, they're two different institutions. Here I was a member as a professional parliamentarian. There I was a student. I guess Parliament was a learning experience as well. I mean, no doubt about it. But I had my pluses in the sense being an Aitchisonian was, you could, even in the parliament, you could find some of your old boys in different parties.
How many?
And you could, quite a few, not in a majority, but a substantial minority.
So
but the easier thing was, Maniza, in the sense that we were not bipartisan in the sense. I mean, I could be with an X party and the other would be in a Y party, but we could sit together and talk about the betterment of the province.
Lovely.
We had no inhibitions that since I'm X and you Y and we are not going to talk today. But today, unfortunately, the bipolarism is such that we don't want to come down and sit together and talk.
But surely
we have preconceived notions about your opponent or your rival.
So you say that while they weren't in the majority, but there was a substantial number of your Aitchisonian classmates at Parliament with you. So you had that common ground with them, that they were Aitchisonian and they shared that with you. So there must have been camaraderie.
Definitely there is. Old boy camaraderie is always there. And someone other, it does help you, being elevated, because they look after you as one of their own. Then there are camaraderie between the landed class. There's camaraderie between the business class, and just like in school, you become a group of friends. So in Parliament, you do become a group, and you have common interests. You might have common backgrounds.
In Aitchison, you had. Did you guys have riding there, or polo, or tent pegging, or something like that?
Yes, actually, this school was based on the bourgeois principle that it was only meant for the elite. It was first known as the Chief College, and anybody who was gazetted as a chief, his sons could go to that college alone only. But later that changed, and it became Aitchison College, and and my three characters, one of my characters, Khan Bahadur Hashmi Jahan, along with his two friends, Mohan Das and Prince Ravinder Singh are old Aitchisonians also. So there's a whole chapter about the Aitchison part of it.
Right. So Aitchison was set up by the British, right?
Yes, it was.
And it was called the Chief.
But it was named as Chief College, and what it meant was that all the progeny of the princely states and the large landholders, only their sons would be allowed in the school.
Mm. And has that changed much?
But I guess, oh yes. There's no, none of the old traditional values are left there now.
Mm. Traditional values such as?
I mean, there was, now it's become more of a school, right? Just like any other school. But I remember going, in the 60s when I was there, and it was totally different. I mean, we had some British teachers, and other than studies and games and all, we were taught manners.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were actually grooming us to be gentlemen. I remember once there was a lady known as Mrs. Morris, and she used to give us a lecture about how to stand in front of a lady. I mean, you could not put your hands in your trousers while talking to a lady. You needed a handkerchief in your pocket wherever you went. And, get up when a lady comes in the room. Things like that. Mm. Never tell a lie. So these were the things which we, in school, we were being taught as extracurricular activities, and still, when I talk to my younger generation and I tell them that this is how we learned, and they're all very fascinated because nobody tells them anymore. Mm-hmm. Not in families also. We don't discuss about mannerism and things like that.
Mm. So did you also have that situation where you called your teachers Madam, please?
Yes, definitely. It was, not only in school, but at the time probably you could also relate to it, because every woman was a madam and every man was a sir. So if he is your elder and you don't know, you're not very familiar with him, rather than using their first name or the whole name, you will call them sir or madam. So a teacher was naturally somebody, especially a lady teacher, would be called madam by the students.
No, but were they called, were they referred to by, like if you were talking about the teacher to your, an Aitchisonian teacher to your parents, would you say, Madam, please has asked me to do this homework?
Yes, we would use like, for example, there were Madam Gohar, who was the headmistress. We would not say Gohar Begum or Gohar Bibi said that. We would say Madam Gohar has said that.
Okay, Madam Gohar, but you didn't say Madam, please had said that.
No. Please also, because when I was talking about us really being taught about how a gentleman should behave, and one of the things was that whenever you wanted something or you wanted to ask a question, you used the word please.
Mm. And
please was, in a manner being polite and to a person, rather than say, give me that, you would say, please give me that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think back fondly to your days of Aitchison?
Yes, I do. I mean, anybody would. And it's not a matter of Aitchison. I mean, being in school and meeting, I'm more closer to my school friends than my college friends. Right.
And the beautiful grounds at Aitchison?
Oh, lovely. I mean, the tent packing, the hockey, the cricket, the athletics. Mm-hmm. Those are good days, because my father was an Aitchisonian also. Mm-hmm. So my son is an Aitchisonian. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 generations of Aitchisonians.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever play polo, Shams?
Unfortunately, I had the bad luck. Though my father, our business was horse breeding, especially race horse breeding. Uh-huh. Somehow or another, that I being the eldest, was kept away from all riding and stuff, the dangerous stuff, he might get hurt.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I did not.
Did your younger brother?
I would have loved to. No, not at that. I mean, someone other. My father was shy. I don't know why. That I would fall off a horse or break my leg or something. Someone other, he didn't encourage me. But I in my college days, I did play tennis. I was captain of the tennis team. I was part of the swimming squad. Was an athlete also. So I had my share of sports also.
Shams, you've said your profession, is politics, and but I really do think that your profession should be writing and perhaps history. Have you thought about that? About really?
I think, Maniza, thanks to you and thanks to the Little Book Company, you own my talents to that extent that now I'm starting another book also, which I shared with you a chapter or so. So if I get the time, I would like to complete that also.
How far?
And it's also a historical novel, so let's see what happens.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit, and don't tell us any of the story, but just tell us where it's located.
It's located right where my village is.
Yes.
And it is known as Mangladei. Mangladei is actually a hill peak which is known as Mangladei, and the village Jalalpur Sharif is based on an old village of Bucephalus. It is the same village which Alexander had established right after his war with Porus. So the story is that right after the war, 200 people were left behind in the village, Garjak, which the older name was Garjak, later it became Bucephalus, and then Bucephalus or Bucephalus, whichever the pronunciation is. And later it became Jalalpur. So there's 200 Greek soldiers left behind to erect a sculpture, bronze sculpture, 100 feet high sculpture of this horse.
Yeah.
And their interaction with the local people at the time.
And Bucephalus is buried there, right?
Sorry, Bucephalus, the Bucephalus in the story, in the first story, is a horse which was owned by my family. Here, Bucephalus is the horse which Alexander owned. No, and he died in bed.
I'm asking that question. Isn't Alexander's horse buried there?
Some say there's also a myth about him erected a bronze sculpture. So I'm taking that story and weaving into my novel.
Wonderful. And can you just enlighten me here? Does the Mangla, the name Mangla, comes from this? Mangladei?
Yes, Mangladei is actually, I don't know the real background of it, because the whole village of Jalalpur Sharif or Bucephalus or Garjak is on a slope of a hill. And the hilltop is known as Mangladei.
Is that at Mangla Dam?
No, Mangla Dam is in Tarbela. This is in Jhelum.
Mangla Dam is not at Tarbela, Shams. Mangla Dam is at Mangla.
Sorry, at Mangla in close to Jhelum. But this is totally different. Okay. But probably the name Mangla would be very common in Sanskrit or Hindu language, or there's got to be a story behind the name Mangla.
There is there's an old fort at Mangla Dam, and I think there's also maybe a shrine there. But no, I don't know about the shrine. I think I just made that up. But wow! So you're now how far into your second novel are you?
I think it's I'm in the early stage, because there's a lot of reading to do, because the time period there is not much literature available, because my story goes into Texla also.
Mm-hmm.
So, because these two adjacent states, one led by Porus and the other, I forget the name. So they had common boundaries, and they were at war most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to read a little more into it.
So how come, Shams, we name sons Sikandar after Alexander, but we don't name them Porus?
Interesting thing for your listeners is that at Jalalpur Sharif we have, built up a research center which my late uncle Commodore Asher Sadiq had initiated, and there we have, there's a monument erected commemorating the war between Porus and Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
But being Porus being our local hero,
Mm-hmm.
so definitely he's above Alexander in any case.
Mm-hmm. Didn't he?
And the interesting thing is, ultimately they started they started as foes, but ultimately they became friends. And Porus joined Alexander's expedition towards Sindh then.
Mm-hmm. It was smart on the part of Alexander to realize that he couldn't defeat the local.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. After the first time anybody really stopped Alexander from his invasions was Porus,
Mm-hmm.
because Porus and the local army fought very well.
Mm-hmm.
It was just because of his military tactics that they lost.
Mm-hmm.
But my most interesting thing is, I realized that Punjabi language, for that matter, because somebody, we had invited one of the Greek ambassadors over to, Jalalpur Sharif to inaugurate that building. And so some words which were so familiar, like, for example, I don't know if it's right or not, but somebody said that the word rooster, cooked in Punjabi, means cooked in Greek also.
Well,
and the fascinating thing is that the living truth, staying there in that area for 200 years, they could not understand Sanskrit or Hindi, and the locals could not understand Greek. So there was a mixture of people speaking Egyptian, Sanskrit, Hindi. So there are a lot of common words which, if research is done, could be found in Punjabi, which are Greek.
Mm-hmm. There are lots of Pakistani immigrants in Greece. Is there any connection between Jhelum and them?
Yes, I mean, like most of our, because we are, the whole area is landlocked in a way that the only thing we produce is soldiers. So after, when they come back, they send their children abroad, and the earning which they send from abroad, on which they, our local economy thrives.
Mm-hmm. But do they go to Greece?
Yes, I know quite a few who have gone to Greece.
So
they've gone to Rome also. There are lots of people in Italy. There are lots of people in Saudi Arabia, Spain even.
I'm trying to make a connection here for your novel. Soldiers, Jhelum, Porus, Sikandar, Greece, and immigrants to Greece from Jhelum.
Yeah. Even our, I don't know if it's how there's a lot of research to be done on that subject, is that some of the local tribes there have dark skins but blue eyes.
Mm-hmm. God.
And some say they some of them are descendants of the Greeks, because lots of those soldiers got married to the local women here.
Well, or right? We can say that,
Like Alexander married one of the tribal tribes, Akhwan tribe leader's daughter. And he encouraged most of his soldiers to get married.
So maybe you can bring out that angle. I mean, now I'm very interested in you bringing out that angle between Jhelum and Greece.
Yes, it's very, 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 very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and bringing it into the modern era.
Because we are kind of got the birthplace of Alexander the Great and Jalalpur as twin sister cities.
Mm-hmm.
Pele and Jalalpur as sister cities.
Say that again.
He was born in Pele, Alexander, and Jalalpur were made into sister cities.
Aha, so you're going to bring that also somehow. You're going to connect all of this up in your novel.
Right.
Wonderful. Well, Shams, I can't wait to see the draft of your second novel. I can't wait to fight with you over it. Very cross with you often enough. And
no. It's a pleasure, really, Maniza. It's a real pleasure, and it's a learning experience.
And you know, Shams, To Chamba House is such a wonderful novel. I hope that someone picks it up to turn it into a film or a serial. But before that, I want everybody listening to buy the ebook and read this wonderful, engrossing novel. Shams Haider Shah, Nawabzada Syed Shams Haider. I want to say all your names. Thank you so
Thank you, Maniza, for having me on your show. And hopefully I'll be sharing those other 5 chapters with you too.
Okay, we're going to fight about that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. God bless.
Bye.